Welcome everyone to the Reclaim and Master Your Energy Online Summit. In this global online event, 18 successful women are sharing their knowledge, wisdom, and experience to help you create and implement powerful, sustainable energy management strategies. Instead of experiencing stress and burnout, it's fully possible to enhance your energy levels on a daily basis and succeed in your work or your mission. This summit will give you the tools to live with the natural cycles, honor your feminine energy, thrive, and create impact in the world the way you want. I am Willemijn Maas, your host, and today I will be speaking with a woman who is on a big mission, Clare Dubois. Clare is the founder of Tree Sisters, a global women's movement supporting humanity's evolution into a restorer species. She's an earth-loving social entrepreneur and inspirational speaker, known for her direct catalytic energy, her whole systems approach to behavioral change, and her unending loyalty and love for the natural world. In her own life, her aim is to reclaim balance, astonish herself, and be walking permission for those who are fed up of being held back and just want to have a go. So welcome, Clare. I'm so honored to have you as a speaker for this summit today.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And your topic for today is accessing natural power, a feminine path of replenishment. And I'd like to dive right in, but I'm not sure if everyone is watching knows Tree Sisters and knows you. So let's start with a short introduction of your mission and your work for Tree Sisters and how that's going and what the organization aims for.
Tree Sisters is, it's a one-of-a-kind. It's an organization that is looking at what we would call the reinstatement of the feminine principle, the reinstatement of feminine consciousness. It's looking at women specifically as a conduit for a different consciousness and a different form of leadership that can come through us when we remember who and what we really are as part of nature. And then that leadership we're directing towards ecological restoration. So there's a measurable output in terms of normalizing giving back to nature. Our giving back being monthly funding of tropical trees. So we're currently funding the planting of over 2 million trees a year across 6 countries and 8 very different ecosystems in the tropics. But we're what we call an in-breath and an out-breath organization. We're looking for the creation of balance. You know, when in your preamble talking about how to avoid burnout, you know, one of the things that we need to do to avoid burnout, first of all, is understand that we're inside a culture that has normalized burnout, that is actually driving burnout, and celebrates burnout. You know, celebrates just how much you can get out of yourself, and therefore just how much we can get out of our planet. That has become normal in our consciousness. So when we're talking about reinstating feminine consciousness, we're talking about reconnecting with a level of intimacy to the felt connection that exists completely with the natural world, with ourselves as part of nature, where we're enough in touch to be able to get the feedback. Not just drive over the top of it like we've been taught, but actually get the feedback. And the feedback right now is incredibly loud in our world. Climate change, you could say it's catastrophic already when you're looking at hurricanes that actually rip bark off trees and pick up sharks out of the ocean and throw them through garden fences. You know, we're dealing with colossal climate change. But the problem is we're doing that frog in a pot of slowly warming water thing. It's being normalized. Like everything is, we're getting used to it. We're getting used to, crisis after crisis after crisis. In the same way that we've got used to overriding our bodies. So Tree Sisters is essentially, it's a call to the deepest part of a woman that can no longer collude with this driving over life, driving over the feminine principle, driving over our bodies. It's a call to that part of us to suddenly go, you know what, I can't do this anymore and I'm going to do it differently. And then we're 2 parts. We're feminine empowerment, feminine leadership, and tropical reforestation. So on the feminine side, we run courses, full moon calls, new moon calls, gather women together, offer tools, offer trainings, to help deeply connect with life and ourselves and each other. And then we've got the tropical reforestation side, where we're doing a lot of due diligence on projects, and we're working with projects in the tropics, and we're basically channeling money from individuals, because our goal is basically that everybody, because we're all warming our planet by pumping carbon into the atmosphere every day with our choices and our actions. Every time we flick on a switch, if it's not green electricity, it's going, we're warming our world. If we care about our world, then we'll try and cool our world. And so if everybody were giving money for trees every month, we'd be in a very different position than we are now. So that's where we're going. We're going to the normalization of balance, the normalization of respect for the feminine, the normalization of our respect for our bodies and ourselves, and the manifestation of that at scale through a woman-led, you could call it a reforestation revolution, you could call it a woman-led movement on behalf of life, that ultimately re-robes our planet in green.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. And I know that Tree Sisters is already in existence for a few years. And I remember becoming a donor a few years ago myself, and sort of having this feeling of obligation of doing something back. And I think that many people can relate to this in this time and age. And but I remember that I could only feel the mission of Tree Sisters on a deeper level when I crashed into burnout myself. And I was just reflecting on how depleted I was, and I felt so much connection to Mother Earth and how depleted she must have become. And that's where sort of a deeper understanding and awareness came to me about this subject, and that's why it's really close to my heart. And I love that you talk about how to reinstate balance and reinstate the feminine principle in that. So absolutely something that resonates with me. And what I also figured was, when we start caring more for our bodies, we might see that we can care for the planet as well in both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's interesting in your choice of language. You use the word obligation, and in my body, obligation is kind of okay, I have to do something. It's not a privilege. It's not a joy. It's not innate. And the thing is, when you've been taught, and we've all been taught culturally, to take our mother for granted, like, we've become so separated from the body of Earth that makes us, that breathes us, that we just see it as something that is supposed to provide for us, and we can trash her, and we're poisoning her on every level. I mean, the amount of heavy metal in the atmosphere now, they're basically saying there's no such thing as organic food, because the soil all around the planet is being poisoned by metals in the air. And we know what's happening to the oceans. We know what's happening to our soil. We know what we're doing. And, years ago, I had to perform ritual theater in a workshop that I was in, and I played the Earth in a little cameo called The Rape of the Earth. And I was handing out cups of tea to this group of people that were raping me. It was a very explicit piece of theater, designed to be very explicit. But the person who had the biggest shock was me, because I was Earth, and I was inside the experience of, providing and providing, because that's what I do, and then keeping providing, while they just yanked off my clothes and mined me and deforested me and poisoned me and fought over every last bit that they could consume, not understanding that my body and my ability to provide was being shredded. And it's not just her ability to provide now. She can't stabilize herself anymore. That's why we're losing the ice in the poles. When we've lost the ice in the poles, because it's going so fast now, it's warming way faster than any other part of the planet. If we lose the ice in the poles and we lose the tropical forest, it's over. We're looking straight into the barrel of a gun that we're holding. And we're doing it to ourselves. And in that, there was a point where they'd stripped me so completely, I was naked and I screamed and fell on the floor. And while I was lying on the floor, I realized we don't get a second chance. We don't get to be the teenager that says, oh, I'm done trashing my mother now. I'm gonna wake up and start respecting her and everything's gonna be fine. Because if we carry on as slowly as we are, our children don't have a future. Simple as that. Our children right now, we used to talk about our grandchildren. Actually, we're slamming into it ourselves. And lying there, I just realized you can't put a planet into therapy. The feedback loops are so extreme. It's going to be significant. So somehow there's this colossal missing piece that is understanding the blessing that we live in, understanding the miracle of this planet, understanding the privilege of being alive and being provided for, and understanding the sacred reciprocity, like the act of consciously seeking to give back in some way, to have gratitude, to be in conscious relationship with, to be in presence with, creates a circuit of energy that isn't just split by our weird behavior of disconnection and then looking back and going, oh God, well, I'm obliged to do something. If we can feel our connection, if we can get back into a sense of connection and understand at a felt level our indivisibility from this incredible planet, there is no obligation. There's just love and gratitude. There's just the act of taking care, in the same way that we take care of our children, in the same way that we take care of our grandparents. You take care of your ancestors. You take care of those who have birthed you. And we're not at all. And that is a symptom of a steady but increasingly acute, because of technology now, disconnection, separation, fracturing from our nature as part of nature. And so, when people say, wow, we need this colossal consciousness shift to happen in order for, and I'm there going, God, do we have enough time for a consciousness shift to happen? Well, the reality is, if it doesn't happen, we're done. And us and pretty much most of life on Earth, we're so imperiled at this point. Is there time? I don't know. But what I know is we're here now. We're here now at this moment, at this extraordinary moment in this planet's history and in human history, because humanity has kind of, I think, gone to sleep on our latent potential. What do we live up to? We live up to making more wealth and having bigger houses and maybe having an exciting career and getting married. But actually, what's the function of a human being? What's our role in terms of creation and the miracle of this planet? Well, I don't think we're just here to consume, which is why we point to the question of what is a restorer species? What would it be like if humanity took on this role of replenishment as a core human activity? What if we dared to fall in love with this planet again and realize that it's going to require a complete reversal of our way of thinking and therefore our way of being and doing, to not feel obliged, but to no longer be able to not love enough. Like for our action to be a genuine expression of love in action. Oh my God, look what needs replenishing over here. Look what needs restoring over here. Look what needs cleaning up. Like, let's pour ourselves into restoration. And in doing so, build that circuit, like build that connection. That's the shift in consciousness that we're playing with. How do we come back into felt relationship, actual intimacy with the natural world in a way that we can only restore her because we understand her as part of ourselves?
Yes. And so it's so wise on so many levels. And what I also see is how we feel obliged in in the same way when we're treating ourselves in a certain way. For example, when you were talking, I was thinking about how we see self-care as something on our to-do list, or something else to, we have to. I have to take care of myself because, and it has this flavor of obligation to it, instead of doing it with joy and trying to replenish ourselves and feel why that's necessary, and that it's a nice thing to do as well. And I see the body as a part of Earth, and which it is. And I think this could be the key to not only change the consciousness, how we see and treat the Earth, but also how we treat ourselves. And I was also thinking about what you said about when you talked about this play that you were doing, how we as women are culturally inclined to give and provide all the time, and also for just keep doing that, although we're sometimes forgetting ourselves, treating ourselves badly. So I can see the parallel there as well in how
it's very patriarchal.
Yes, exactly. So is this something? This is another part of the work of Tree Sisters, the feminine leadership part. Is this what it comes down to?
The feminine leadership side of Tree Sisters is essentially enhancing relationship with self, other, sister, and nature. Yes. Everything that we do in our teaching is essentially about strengthening that relationship. We could be more overt. We could be a lot more overt. We're very experimental. We're trying new things all the time. One of the things that we're trying a lot right now is to help women get over their fear of each other, to come into circle and to hold circle, because we need that resilience and support that comes from mutuality and togetherness. But as you were speaking, I was thinking two main things. One, what is a man? And two, what happened to us as a result of the witch burnings? And what is a man? Because a man is a very different thing to a woman. To me, we're almost different species. Like our energetic wiring and our hormone system, like the chemistry of us, is very, very different, and it prepares us for different roles. And so we've got the warriors over here. That's not to say that a woman can't be a warrior, but men have an energetic and chemical makeup that is designed to fight and to protect and to go out in the world and to do in a very particular way. And the feminine makeup is very much more about nurture and relationship and love. And so that very classic sense of she's holding the home and he's protecting the home, like she's holding the health and the hearth and the children and the food and the healing, and he is the guardian and the protector. When you go through hundreds of years of rampant persecution as women, where the fact of being a woman was enough to have you put to death in various incredibly painful ways that were witnessed by a lot of other women, where you are repeatedly tortured, and for some all it required was your husband to die and the church wanting to get hold of your money. That was enough. It was an industry. Witch burning was an industry. And it taught women what they needed to be in order to survive. And it happened inside of families. So mothers would be sending, daughters to the burnings. Daughters might be colluding with their grandmothers, because essentially it was a fight for survival. So there was a colossal level of betrayal between women. One of the things that could get you killed was hanging out with other women. Like if you were seen in conversation with other women. So we had sort of impressed into our psyche and into our epigenetics and and this is if you're a Western woman, this is in all of our bloodlines. We are the descendants of this. This is what you need to be and do in order to survive. This is who you attach yourself to. You attach yourself to a man. You do no longer think for yourself. You do exactly what you're told. You know, it was an ultimate way of persecuting us for our power. Do not be powerful. Do not be outspoken. Do not, like, it was just do not, do not, do not. Because if you do any of those things, you die. And so we became property. We became dumbed down. We became frightened, incredibly frightened, because the wrongest move was a death sentence, and a death sentence that was not easy or pretty, you know, like terrifying deaths and public deaths as well. So I don't think we can underestimate the conditioning that has caused us to be overgivers and followers and afraid of our power and afraid of each other and disconnected from our bodies when there's that much inherited trauma sitting there, and disconnected not just from the witch burnings, but for centuries of being owned by men, where sex with your wife was your right whenever you wanted it. So, you know, thousands of years of being raped, thousands of years of being used, hundreds of years of not being able to own property or earn, you know, the different ways that womankind has been treated. And if you extend beyond Western women, then we're in the territories of stoning, you know, being buried up to your neck in sand and stoned, or we're in the lines of femicide and the infant deaths by the millions of girl children because they're not wanted, or female circumcision. You know, what has happened to women, and what is still happening to women, because we still have an increase of witch burnings in Africa. We still have stonings going on in the Middle East. We still have genital circumcision going on. We still have trafficking going on. We still have, I mean, there's a real impact. Like, just because as a woman we feel, you know, we may have had a lovely upbringing, we may have, you know, been treated really well, we're sitting inside a cultural field, like a collective consciousness of woman that has been hammered, absolutely hammered. And all, you know, all of that is sitting unresolved, all of us carry part of it. All of us carry part of it. It's in our blood, it's in our conditioning, it's in the air. And so there's this predisposition to both attach ourselves to the men, but also to try and be like a man, because that's safe. And so men don't require as much self-care as women. They don't. They're hardier as a beast, you know. And to compete with the men, we override ourselves completely, which is, you know, in the corporate world, who's allowed to have a period in the corporate world? Who's allowed to follow the ebbs and flows of their bodies? Who's allowed to come forward with the different guises that we have at different times of the month? We're not. You have to plow straight over the top of your cycle as a woman. It's an inconvenience. It's not a source of our power. You know, we live in a linear world, not a cyclical world. And yet our world is cyclical. It's seasonal. And so are women. Women are seasonal only. All 4 seasons happen within, you know, 1 month. So we have, I think, we have to acknowledge why it is so difficult to take care of ourselves. We have been fundamentally taught that we are not worthy. You know, if you're born a girl in some countries, you're put to death still. You know, if you're born in other countries, they'll see how fast they can marry you off as, you know, age 9 or 10 or 11, and you become property. In other countries, still you're not allowed to be educated. In other countries, you're not allowed to drive. In other countries, your transition into womanhood is to have your clitoris hacked off and everything else sewn up. No, that is not a message that says you are revered, so revere yourself. You're cherished, so cherish yourself. You're precious, so we're going to take care of you, so take care of yourself. We don't have that pushed into us. At the deepest systemic level, that's not the message that women are given. The message that women are given are, look as beautiful as you can so that you can attach yourself to a man, and then give as much as you can to your family, and be appropriate. Like, we respond inside of our conditioning, and our conditioning is not just our families now. It's not just Western culture now. It's what's been pressed into our blood and pressed into our DNA over thousands of years. And the fundamental message of that is, if you're a woman, you're less than, still. Which I can only assume is because if you're a woman, you're extremely powerful. Because why else would anybody need to put anything down as hard as that? The only reason to try and diminish someone, and that's what's happened, we've been consciously diminished, is if there's power there. And there's a sense of inadequacy on the other side. So at some deep level, men have been, I think, extremely threatened by women, which is why they have needed to pretty much stand on us. And so we stand on ourselves. That's the thing. That's why self-care is so hard.
It's really hard, yeah. And I would like to share something which happened for me this morning, because it sort of relates to this, what you said. So I have been with a sick child over the past few days, and I was completely exhausted this morning. So I knew I had to take the day off and do, like, self-care. And I had there was this huge wave of grief washing over me at first, so much sadness. And only when I moved through that, I could do some self-care. So this is, I think, related to what you shared, is how much pain there is underneath the need for self-care and for replenishment, and allowing ourselves to have that for ourselves, to give it to ourselves. So
I think women's bodies are highly, highly sensitive and highly attuned. And I think, and that's not to say that men's aren't, but I think we're more receptive, we're more intuitive, because we're wired to feel the system and figure out what it needs to bring it back into harmony. But our world has never been more chaotic or more threatened. Yeah. You can't not feel that. You can't not feel that. It's like none of us are an island. We may want to be an island, we want to be alone, but we're sitting inside a collective field of which we're a part. And so I think we really have to take seriously the fact that many of us are not feeling all right, a lot of the time. Many of us are feeling increasingly disturbed. Many of us are increasingly unwell, increasingly emotional. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. It's appropriate to be crying a lot right now. There's a lot to be grieving for. We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. Species is being snuffed out every day. We're losing life at an incredible rate. If that doesn't hurt, if we can't let ourselves feel that, it's because we're numbing off. If we're numbing off, then we're also numbing off from our ability to feel how we're feeling. To me, there's a normalization of crying. There's a normalization of grieving. For me, I have to move my body to feel how I am and let my emotions move every day, or I start to get into trouble. So I have a practice of dancing, and almost every time I dance, when I just put some music on and start moving, let my body move to the music and let the movement help me feel how I'm actually feeling. And then when I feel how I'm actually feeling, usually I'll cry. But I'm getting so practiced at crying as a way of moving energy through my body. Like, thank God we can cry. It's one of the best gifts of being a woman. We've been maligned for it and, criticized for it, being too emotional. To me, it's a way that our body processes and digests and releases. So it's a cleanser. It's like having a shower emotionally. So for me to dance and be able to cry, I may cry really hard for 5 minutes. I have no idea why I'm crying. I don't need to understand. But it's like it's allowing my system to throw off whatever it needs to throw off in a very embodied way, so that I can come out the other side and go, okay, now I can get on with my work. Now I can do whatever. I think we don't have to understand our emotion. And I think trying to understand it or get rid of it is fundamentally misunderstanding how a woman's body works and how a woman's psyche works. We're all forms of weather in one day, usually. I say we're like British weather. It's like we're changeable because we're receptive to the ebbs and tides of what's going on around us. We're receptive. We're listening, and as listening beings, this is one of the reasons why Tree Sisters, as listening beings, we have a profound role at this time, because the world of humans needs to wake up and feel what's happening, or we won't act. And so the feelers, the really strong feelers, which are the women, to me, we're the ones that have to bring our voices. We're the ones that need to stand up and scream and cry and stay standing up. The children are starting to stand up. The women are starting to stand up. It's like we need to hold hands and stand and yell, no more. Just because we've gone on like this for however many hundreds of years doesn't mean that that's an appropriate way of living. The only people that are going to reinstate the feminine and put the crown back on the feminine and on ourselves is the women. We can't sit around and wait for the men who are just as confused as we've been, just as conditioned as we've been. We can't wait for them to say, oh, let's all bow to the feminine principle. Let's all start caring. It's like it's going to require woman to claim what's sacred, claim our own rhythms, claim our bodies back, value ourselves, and we have to do that ourselves. Like nobody can do it. Like you can say to a woman, you're beautiful, you're amazing, take care of yourself. I'm going to touch most of us, like unless we can feel it and we have that desire that impulse to take care of ourselves, it's not going to change. So yeah, I mean, to me, the relationship between how we treat our bodies and the relationship between how we treat our planet, they're exactly the same thing. And I think earth care can increase intimacy and bring you back to your body, and body care can increase intimacy and bring you back to earth. Like I don't know that there's a one better pathway, but they are absolutely indivisible for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. And I love what you said about that the feelers will be really important in changing and making change. And today we had a huge climate strike in my country, in which all the youth and secondary school students went to the government buildings, and they had a large strike. So yes, youth and the children are standing up and trying to make a change and to enforce change on the government, which is amazing. I think that's happening. It's so necessary, and I really look forward to what they will bring to the new generation and to the new the new way of being in the world. Yeah. So for Tree Sisters as an organization, you shared a little bit about your own practices, like a movement practice and allowing yourself to feel. So does Tree Sisters as an organization have, do we have like a sort of a feminine practice or feminine way of running the company? Can you speak a bit about that?
Well, yes, and we could be doing, I mean, in total honesty, we could be doing better right now. The bit that we could be doing better with is one of the things that I've most loved about what we've tried to do, which is to operate in alignment with the seasons. So what that's meant classically is that we really do a lot of discernment and reflection and listening at the end of the autumn. As we drop into winter, we do our dreaming and our visioning. We take a really good in-breath, everybody stops, you know, in the same way that like the monthly cycle of a woman, you know, understanding what happens in the spring, that new burst of energy that arises in the spring, you know, birthing new projects in the spring, birthing new campaigns in the spring, being in full pollination and splendor in the summer, you know, like how do we spread in the summer, and then in the zone of discernment in the autumn, you know, the premenstrual phase of the year, essentially, what are we reflecting on and what are we honing, and then what are we taking forward into the darkness? You know, we've actually experimented a lot with that inside of Tree Sisters as an organization. How do we plan our year so that what we're doing makes sense in relationship to nature, so that essentially what we're doing is supported by the natural energies, like we amplify each other. This last year, it's kind of not worked so well because we've had enormous technical difficulties, and so we've been having a death, and we're about to have a birth because we're about to have a new website in March, and all our systems will be functioning again. So hopefully, when everything is working, we'll be able to do better. But inside of the team itself, because we're virtual, we're all over the world, the team is completely spread across, you know, both sides of Australia and La Reunion and England and America, and we know where we are in each other's cycles. Like it's a practice to know what day of a woman's cycle it is for all the team members, and it's a policy that on whichever of your strongest bleed days, whether it's your day 1 or your day 2, you take a day off. And that's on top of our allotted holiday allowance, which is a good healthy chunk. You know, we have a good healthy chunk of holiday allowance. And on top of that, we have 12 bleed days. And you're frowned upon if you don't take it. So I'm frowned upon because quite often now that I'm perimenopausal and my bleed is coming whenever it wants to, it's not as easy to plan. And so quite often now I find myself working through, because I've got so many things planned, it's just really inconvenient. But I'll try and cancel things, you know, and it's an accepted thing in the team that you just may not show up to a team meeting. And in fact, you're required not to. And the understanding is that at that time of the month, because you're wide open, it's a wonderful time to do visioning. So quite often there'll be, you know, whatever issues are going on or brainstorming that's going on, we can have a team member come back out of her bleed with ideas because she's been doing visioning for the company. Well, the charity, not a company. So, yeah, we try. It's our policy to honor that rhythm. And it's also our policy to understand each other's cycles. And so that if there are, you know, if particular members of the team struggle at a time of month, they get more leeway. And we'll try and take work off them, you know, and we support each other with that. So, and what's interesting is when I say all of this, it's become so normal for me. I can't actually imagine being inside an organization that isn't like that, but I can imagine for other people listening in, it's kind of like, really? You could do that? And we're a feminine charity. We're all women. We're running Tree Sisters as an ongoing experiment on every level, whether it's, you know, the courses that we run. So Alexander and Shani did a course on menstruality for Tree Sisters that is there, because we need to be able to understand our cycles. You need to be able to understand what it means to be a woman and the power that we have in our bodies because of how we're built. You know, it's a fundamental difference between a man and a woman. A woman has a womb. Her womb and her whole hormone structure is cyclical. We run with the tides. There are very different states at each time of the month that have us show up and have capacities in very different ways. You know, not honoring that, not understanding that, not knowing that means we miss what we are. We miss the gifts that we can bring. We miss the gifts of the experience that we can have by understanding this is completely appropriate. This is why I'm feeling this. This is actually my need now. I need to give that to myself. You know, in terms of self-care, I think understanding your cycle is one of the most fundamental things a woman can do. And not just self-care, but access to power, access to significant power. Because aligning with your cycle is like aligning with the rhythm of your own being and the rhythm of our planetary being. And out of that, I think it's one of the fastest ways to come into connection, and one of the fastest ways to start listening, really listening to what is wanted and needed. And it's really hard in a world that goes in a straight line and wants us to be in the summer of our cycle all the time. Like we're supposed to be a fruiting tree all the time. We're not supposed to dump our fruit, shed our leaves, go underground and go into hibernation when we bleed. We're not supposed to do that. Women are supposed to be on all the time because men are on all the time because they're not cyclical. We're not men. Trying to be a man is one of the fastest ways to harm yourself as a woman. And I think that's why, you know, a friend of mine went to a conference and had a whole bunch of women standing on stage, executives, talking about the different drugs that they had to take in order to manage their anxiety and depression. I was like, oh my God, we've got women on stage giving advice about the drugs they need to take to handle the effect on their bodies and their psyches of overriding themselves. That's the female version of climate change right there.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I left healthcare and I know what you're talking about. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So to recap what you just said, that following your cycle, there's tremendous power for self-care in there. And I also loved what you said earlier in the interview, that feeling and allowing yourself to feel is also a key to better self-care and to creating this sort of sacred ritual with yourself. Do you have any other tips or maybe strategies you use yourself when you feel like your energy is going down or when you feel challenged in some way?
When my energy is going down, I lie down. If I'm going down, then I'll go down with it if I can. I mean, my team would be the first to say I'm an overworker, but it's a tricky thing running an organization and being the front person at the same time. So I'm in the process of trying to reorganize my life or reorganizing my life so that I can bring more balance in, because I've chosen a big game, and a big game is a difficult thing to play. So I'm not in balance. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am. However, I do have a lot of tricks in terms of self-management. So for me, I chose a path of Kriya Yoga, that's energy yoga. And so I have a Kriya Yoga practice that I do to open up my own energies and clear my energies when I start. If I can't do that, I will dance. But, you know, the number one thing for me that overrides anything else is being out in nature. You know, if I'm attached to a computer, I can feel so many different things that I've no idea whether they're even mine, because I'm plugged into that huge web of information and feeling that's just flying around the world. But when I go outside and I connect with the trees and I connect with the sky and I focus on the beauty, or I do some gardening, or I go and sit by the river, then I can replenish. Then I can replenish psychically, I can replenish mentally, I can replenish energetically and physically. There is nothing like going and sitting with nature. Now you can go and sit in nature and continue just going la 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 and get very little benefit. I mean, you get some benefit, but if you go in nature and you can be present enough to still your mind, like sit with a tree and not just look at it with your eyes, but soften your gaze and open the entire surface of your body to that tree. And come into a field of gratitude. Like find your gratitude, look for the beauty, feel for what they are, feel for what they've given us, feel for the miracle of generosity that they are. touch in with your gratitude, soften the whole front of your body, and start breathing consciously with the tree. You can start to build up a circuit. You can start to listen to them. Trees will talk to you. You know, they're incredibly intelligent beings. You can do the same with plants. You can do the same with animals. You can do the same with the sky. You can do the same with the river. You can do the same with rocks. Open your body to the actual reality of a field that connects you to everything. And then suddenly you're online with nature, and the immense energy and intelligence of nature can start pouring into your body, and you can move into a place of intimacy, like what I call genuine intimacy. That is my go-to. Like, that is my drug of choice. My sanity. Like, the moment I go outside and I can smell fresh air, I feel better no matter what's going on. So best of all, lying down on my back next to a river, under the trees, looking at the sky, and being able to have, be in a state of gratitude, connection, and relationship, and forget what I am. That's the other trick. It may sound mad, but when you forget what you are, when you no longer need in that moment to be identified as a human being, and you just become awareness, being aware, and that awareness happens to be in a physical body, okay, but we don't even need to know what the body is. When you drop needing to know and you go into fascination with everything, you become energetically available because your closed mind is open. You become available to impressions and intuitions and communications that are going on in nature between the trees and the sky and the clouds and the river and the birds and everything. You become part of that. So, go into nature, drop your perception of yourself, make yourself available, come into reverence, come into gratitude, drink and feed properly from the miracle of the natural world. And if you make that a practice, your life will change, and so will your health.
That's beautiful, truly replenishing, and go out into nature. That's a beautiful advice. So what if the audience wants to know more about Tree Sisters? Where can they go? Where can they find more information?
treesisters.org. You'll also find us on Facebook. You'll also find us, there's a group called the Tree Sisters Welcoming Circle, which is, it's a Facebook group that you can come into to have an experience of the sisterhood, and also hear from members of the team. The team come in to share and to talk, help you understand what this is. If you look on Tree Sisters on Facebook, you'll find in our events, you'll find that every month there is a full moon call. You can sign up there. They're all free. And we now have a community that's growing on the Mighty platform. So if you download the Mighty Networks app on your phone, you can find Tree Sisters in there, and there are women from all over the world. We're starting all these different groups all under one. We're calling it the Nest. So in the Nest, there is a way for you to come in there. And if you look at our website, understand that our website is dying quietly right now, and the new one is about to be born. But you'll be able to see all our tree projects, what we're doing, how we do it, what our reforestation strategy is, what our due diligence process is in choosing our projects. You'll be able to look in our resources and find the Femiversity, which has all of our video teachings and past meditations. There's dancing, there's ceremony, there's ritual. In the website, you'll also be able to find access to the groves. That's all the sisterhood circles that are growing around the world. You can find out whether you want to start a grove. There's monthly calls to support you with that. I mean, there's so much there. You just need to come and step in. I would say to everybody, please sign up for the newsletter. It's only once a month, but then we can inform you of everything that's happening and invite you into everything that's happening. This last newsletter that's just gone out, we've invited everybody to bring their voices forward about what their perception of a feminine response to climate change is, because we're going to be bringing something out later in the year. We bring women's voices and women's leadership forward, but you need to be involved. And I would also say, from my heart, you know, the core of Tree Sisters is this sacred reciprocity. It's this willingness to feel the impact that we're having on our world in terms of the carbon that we're emitting, and to actively and consciously and joyfully and respectfully make the choice to start giving back. And not giving back from what's the least I can do to feel better about myself, but what's the most I can do to get as much carbon out of the atmosphere so that I can look the future generations in the eye and say, I am doing something whilst I'm reducing my footprint over here and trying to change my life. I'm actively trying to get as much carbon out of the atmosphere as possible, which is why, one of the reasons why we're doing tropical trees. There is a constant growing season in the tropics. So they sequester carbon 3 times as fast as in the temperate zones. And the tropical forests of our world they're not just the lungs of the planet, they're also the coolers, and they're the rain creators. So as we're losing our forests around the tropical belt, we're losing our rain. And it's a massive problem. People don't understand that trees are rain. Trees are rain, trees are biodiversity, trees are groundwater, trees are healthy soil, trees are all the species that we need. Trees provide our rivers. You know, trees suck up the carbon so that it doesn't go into the ocean and kill our coral. 80 to 90% of our coral is dead or dying. That's the bottom of the food chain in the oceans. We need trees so radically now. And every single one of us can reallocate something. You know, when you reallocate, you're saying, I'm going to stop using that money to take from the planet, and I'm going to use that money to give back to the planet. You know, and if you can give $20 a month, then you're planting, you know, 600 trees a year or something. I mean, it's, you know, you can grow a lot of trees, but what if you can give 100, or what if you can give 200? Like, can we be honest with ourselves about the imbalance that we've been taught into that says, no, I'm going to spend everything on taking, and I'm not going to spend anything on giving. It's time to give. It's genuinely now time to give. So you can do that, treesisters.org/donate. And I really invite you to give as much as you can. And partway through this year, we're going to have changed our donation system so that we will be able to tell you every month how many more trees that is. You'll be able to see how many trees overall. So for those of you like yourself who've been donating for a while, we'll be able to tot it all up for you and be able to tell you exactly what you've planted to date so that you can keep track. So that's coming this year. But in the meantime, that you'll know you're doing something. So those are some of the paths, and there's going to be more.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I highly recommend your website and for everybody to check out what's there. It's a wealth of wisdom over there. And thank you so much, Claire, for this interview. I really loved speaking with you. So much wisdom.
Thank you so much for inviting me.